Live. I'm Becca, and tonight I'm going to be interviewing Erin and Christian, author and illustrator team and the masterminds behind the case of Sensational Stims. Before we get started this evening, I want to share a quick note about language. On this channel, you will hear myself and many of my guests use identity-first language, such as autistic person or disabled person. This language is largely preferred by the neurodivergent and disabled community. Join me in using this affirming language to help end the stigma. All right, we're going to get started tonight by getting to know our guests a little bit. Erin and Christian, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourselves, your background, where you're from, maybe some of your favorite hobbies? I don't have a preference who goes first. You guys can duke it out.
Christian should go first because he's the coolest person I know.
Oh, I love that. That's so friendly.
I was going to say Erin could go first. Hey. Hey, you call me cool? Okay.
All right, go for it, Christian.
I'm Christian. I illustrated the book, and I am a very, very big animation enthusiast. I am a self-taught artist, and kind of in my spare time, I also collect and archive VHS tapes and that sort of stuff. Huge fan of like TV and really anything regarding like scheduling and the ins and outs of that stuff.
Awesome. I love that. Like yeah, I didn't know the VHS part about you. That's really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
And like a lost art. I know that people are like trading and collecting them online for insane amounts of money because it's like a lost art. Like our next generation, they'll know nothing about VHS.
Yep.
So that's very cool. Thanks for sharing.
No problem.
All right. He's like an archivist. Oh, I have a little one in here, but
that's okay.
Sorry, so I'm a mom. That's something I do. My kids are 7, almost 8 and 9. And sorry. Jeez Louise. And so they go to elementary school, and I'm a high school English teacher. So a lot of my time is spent around children, either mine or other people's. And I love going outdoors. We do a lot of hiking and camping as a family. Obviously, I love writing and connecting with other people like you, Becca and Christian. And I love meeting strangers. I think that's one of my gifts. That's why I'm able to do things like this, because I'm just a regular English teacher who likes to talk to people. So I do a lot of that. And I love to write and I love to read. I read about 1 book a week on average.
I love that.
What I do with my free time, and then just go on walks with friends once in a while. Just kind of lay low and hang out. So those are my favorites.
That's great. I'm gonna have to have you be my accountability buddy for reading, Erin, because it's something that I really want to get better at. I set a goal this year to read a book a month, and I started off strong, but man, life gets in the way, and I need to prioritize reading. It's so important. And we tell our students that it's so important, and then I'm not doing it myself.
Well, I think it's like also though, you got to find the right book, and if you figure out what books work for you, and then just one little nugget, I know we're not talking about this, but something that I've noticed a lot of authors do, especially in fiction books, but really even in nonfiction, is they will reference a book that really inspired them. Sometimes it's like a little Easter egg in there.
I love that.
I've read the best books, but I never remember them. So I have like a little note on my phone of all the books I want to read and all the books that I've read, but a lot of them are referenced from other books that I've read. And so it creates this little, I get these really cool books that I would have never had access to. So that's my tip for anyone who wants to read more. You got to just find the right book. It's not you. You're reading the wrong thing.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right, because when I've been most successful, it's been when I found books that I really enjoy. So I think you're right. And making it work for you, I recently got into audiobooks because that was more accessible to me, being able to kind of listen to them while I'm on the go.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both for sharing. I think most people, if they found my YouTube channel, they know a little bit about me. But if there's new guests, new audience members tonight that are here for Erin or Christian, just so you know a little bit about me, I'm Becca Bodette. I am a special educator, an advocate, and a behavior specialist. And I recently founded my own company, the Collab, about 2 months ago. I just had the 2-month birthday of the Collab. Thank you. And I created the Collab as a place for parents and caregivers and practitioners to collaborate and make the world more inclusive and accessible to neurodivergent and disabled populations. I really want to amplify voices in that community and figure out how we can change in all of our fields, because I think we're all really responsible for harm reduction and doing better for the next generation. So that was my big inspiration for, quitting my 9 to 5 and starting the Collab. Although it was hard to leave the families and kids I worked with at my previous job, but fortunately, a lot of them still keep in touch and are cheering for me.
That's awesome. That's inspiring.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you. Yeah, and in my spare time, much like Erin, I like to be outside a lot. So traveling, hiking, backpacking,
Nice.
and hopefully more reading.
Outdoor people.
Woo!
Unite.
Unite. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you both for telling the audience a little bit more about yourselves.
Sure.
I'm really curious to hear what inspired you both to write and illustrate the case of Sensational Stims. And this time we'll start with Erin, since Christian started first last time.
That sounds fair.
You're taking turns.
No, I had never really heard that phrase harm reduction before. You used it earlier, but I'm like, oh, well, that's the reason. Obviously as a teacher, it just, we talked about language. So stimming is short for self-stimulatory behavior. And it's like things that people do to regulate their emotions or their sensations that they have from outside, right? So sometimes there's acceptable stims, like hair twirling and foot tapping and rocking your foot or your leg, jostling your leg. Even maybe sometimes biting your nails, but it's kind of a little bit rude. But then there's other stims that are kind of less socially acceptable, like rocking or flapping your hands or maybe squealing with your vocal cords or making certain sounds. And so my son is autistic. My 9-year-old is autistic, and so he stims quite a bit because he has like sensory needs that are very, very different than a neurotypical person.
Right.
So yeah, it's like a really typical way that parents know that their child is autistic is that they stim a lot. But a lot of parents don't know that is stimming. They don't know what it is. They just, it's like an unusual, they'll usually call it weird or undesired behavior. And a lot of times people try to stop stimming. And when you do that, you do unintentionally cause a lot of harm to the one who's stimming. Right. And so as I learned from actually autistic people and as I kind of started unpacking, right, like what is sensory regulation and why is it so important? And as I started learning like the right vocabulary, initially I was like, why is he doing that? Like he can't stop moving. When I realized like, oh, that's helping him. And like if it was something that was impacting his daily living, and I learned this largely through working with occupational therapists or OTs. I was like, oh, wait, okay, but he's stimming so much that like he can't, complete a task or finish a meal that needs to get done, right? He needs some help with that, but we don't want to like stop the stimming. We want to help him whatever's causing that disruptive input. And so, anyways, that's kind of complicated. And I'm really giving you. I know I'm kind of.
You're fine. I love it.
That took me couple of years to figure out what that meant and what that is and why it's okay. I was just so fearful at first because I really didn't understand. So once I kind of understood, and I was like, oh, wait. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because you sometimes stim when I just won the lottery, right? And so it's just a way to regulate yourself either emotionally or sensory wise. And so once I like, oh, I'm not so nervous anymore. And then I was like, oh, I can understand when my child is overwhelmed. I know what stims mean he's anxious. I know what stim mean he's pumped up, he's happy, he's sad, right? And then I could really, because for many autistic people, and my son included, verbal language skills, they're a little bit delayed.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of autistic people use alternative communication sources and stuff. And so talking about emotions or needs, especially when you're young, like if you're a child, just because developmentally you're a child and you don't have the vocabulary, it can be really hard to say what you need. So stimming is
Right.
sort of like a clue. It's like a
Yes.
clue, like a hint. And so that's how the case of sensational stims, to help
I
someone who's upset.
love that.
You have to deduce the stims, but you have to know that it's okay. It's a clue to help someone. It's not like a clue that we need to squash and
Right.
stop it in its tracks. And so I said, what would that look like if they were characters, right? And so
Yeah.
my son and my daughter are wonderful friends, and they're so great together. So the characters, they're not named after them,
But they're based off of them.
they're modeled off
I
of them.
love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And
So
Erin, I love that. And so much of what you said about the fear and kind of the misunderstanding that you had about stimming prior to listening to the actually autistic community and learning from your son, it really resonated with me, because working as a special educator and then as a behavior specialist, I had a lot of misunderstanding around it. I did do harmful things before I knew better. Telling parents to block stimming or like redirecting it during an activity and kind of carrying on when really that child was dysregulated and not feeling safe sensory wise. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that, and that I try to let audiences know that I'm not up here talking about something thinking someone's bad because they've made mistakes. Like, I've made mistakes in my practice, and we can all be better and learn together of what to do instead. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that you've made mistakes too.
oh yeah, and I just appreciate you saying that too, because like I think a lot of people would prefer just to like not even think about the harmful things that they've done, because
Yeah.
it's like sometimes I look back and I still, even years later, I'm like, oh, I wish I could go back
Mm-hmm.
and tell that kid or do it different with my own kids, or do
Yes.
it different with myself. We don't understand this stuff. So we got to normalize it, because you
Yes.
don't know everything. You don't have to know everything. But you can only move forward if we know. And so my
Right.
hope of this book is to reduce the harm that other people unintentionally do, right? But
Yeah.
I can't say that. It's hard for me to say, don't hurt your kid, read this book.
Right.
So people will watch this and know.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great place to start. You started from a place of fear, which turned to curiosity and
Yeah.
reflection. And now you're sharing that with other people who are maybe a few months or a few years, you know, back from where you are in their journey, in their learning journey.
Yeah. I just want to speed it up for everyone so they don't have to go through the heartache,
Yeah,
make it easy for them.
for sure. That I feel that deep in my bones.
Yeah.
Christian, what was your inspiration? I know you did the illustrations for the story.
Yep. Yeah, so I saw what Erin was planning to do with the book, and right
Yeah.
away I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like
Yes.
exactly on point.
Mhm.
Erin knows what she's talking about. I'm seeing stuff in this story that I don't see in a whole lot of mainstream media.
Mhm.
And I knew right away I wanted to work on the project with her.
Yay. That's
And I was so
awesome.
Yep.
grateful.
Thank you.
How did you two end up finding each other and starting this creative partnership?
So Erin found me. She saw this TV interview I did talking about like my experiences with autism, my
Mhm.
passion for animation and tapes and that sort of stuff, and she contacted me from that, going from that point, and
Yeah.
that's basically how we hit it off.
I
Yeah.
love
Well,
that.
I first contacted him because I wanted him to review my draft.
Oh yeah, that's
Mhm.
right.
So that I know that was like a long time ago, but like,
A lot has happened.
could I get, yeah, to like check this out? Like,
Yeah.
that's like a big critique, right? Especially when you're
Right.
talking about disabilities,
Of
is like
course.
people don't connect with like the person that is being discussed, or like the type, right, or the
Right.
neurotype that's being discussed. And so I was like, you know what, who? So I found some bloggers, I found Christian's video, and so I paid actually autistic people to review it. And then I was like, trying to interview artists, and then we were already talking because he reviewed, and I said, no, Christian, I know you do artwork. Would you like to submit some stuff? And so it was amazing. It was a
I
wonderful.
love that.
And he's so talented too.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of looking over in the chat right now. My brother hopped on and he says, "Hey yo!" And then we have Teresa in the chat saying, "Great book and wonderful illustrations. The book really helps my very imperfect understanding." Thanks for the vulnerability, Teresa. Love that. We're all in a learning journey. Oh, well,
hi, Teresa.
I love that. I like how our comments so far are from family members, but we have supportive family members. That's so important.
Right.
That's so important.
Right. Support goes a long way.
Yes. My brother Dylan, who's in the chat right now, he actually shot the video for my mission statement for my website. Nice. So I have just like a little video explaining the Collab, and he's a film student, so he actually filmed that and edited that. So lucky to have supportive family. Your aunt says, "Shh, she outed me."
Yeah, that's right.
I love that.
But, you know, it's good. You know, you don't do cool stuff without support. And so my aunt has been super supportive. Christian's mom, I mean, she's probably the most supportive lady ever. Is that true, Christian?
Whoa.
She's very supportive too. But we can't do cool stuff without someone's like rooting you on and being enthusiastic, you know. And so it's hard to do it, right? We all have day jobs or other things that we have to do, and so you need people to kind of like you know, tell you
like
keep going.
rally behind you.
But sometimes I'd be like, this is dumb. I'm an idiot. I shouldn't, you know, who am I? I don't, right?
Yeah.
And so when you have cool people saying like, nah, you could do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My dad was the final push for me to give my notice at my previous job and start the Collab full time. He was, I don't know, him and I walk almost every morning because he lives down the road from me, and
cool.
And he's a tough cookie. He's like a pretty tough critic. Usually he'll either not give you advice or he'll tell you when something's a horrible idea. So the fact that as I was getting in my car to leave for work after our walk, he shouts out to my car, "You should do it. You should start the Collab." And I'm like, okay, my dad's behind this. Like, I have to do it. Like, he was the final push that I needed. So I'm really glad to hear that we all have such supportive families, because I think you're right. Like, you need that community, especially when the negative self-talk kicks in and you get that like imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to do this? Like, I'm not that special. And it's like, well, that's not true. We're all really special and our voices matter, especially when it comes to uplifting others, which I think that your book is really doing. You're uplifting a whole community of people, and it's so important.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, my mom and my sister, they were extremely supportive throughout the whole development of the illustrations and
I love that.
And everything.
It was a lot
That's
of work.
awesome.
You did a great
It was
job.
a lot of work, yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
It was my first time doing like a big project like this, but I really enjoyed working with Erin on it.
Yeah, we were both novices, so we were really cool about when, you know, like when I was like not explaining something well, he'd be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I don't know. What am I talking about? You know, but it was good because we both kind of don't know what we don't know, but we helped each other kind of like walk through that.
Yeah, we're learning together.
Yeah, we were learning together, but I feel like we're both like nice people. Like, I don't think, sometimes you can feel stressed when you do, you know, a project, or like I imagine when you started your business, it's very stressful, right? I hope I'm doing the right thing. This is a lot of my time and energy. What if it's wrong? Right? It's so like, it's cool to collaborate with someone who's like kind of like encouraging, but like, you know, you can be safe around, you know, and I think that's cool. That's good that we build these kind of communities, and that what you're doing too it's a big deal. And it's also a big deal for someone to say, like, you know how you said your dad doesn't just tell you everything's a good idea. That's also good for someone. There were a few times where Christian and I were like, no, we should do it this way. No, we should do this. We maybe didn't see it the same way, but then we ultimately found a way for us to work through whatever the issue was. You know, we don't have to always agree. and we can still be friends, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I
Yeah.
love that you found Christian just online. Like you didn't know him previously. I think that's one of my favorite parts about starting my business, because I had sort of an echo chamber and a small, I worked in really small places. I'm from rural New Hampshire. I don't know if either of you have been to New Hampshire, but it's tiny. I worked in schools in my internships where there were 10 kids in the class, and that was two grades combined. So, I mean, tiny. And if there's kind of one attitude in the school, that's generally everybody's attitude. So, you're not necessarily being pushed out of your comfort zone. So one of my favorite parts, and I know Erin, this was before we went live, you were talking a lot about just like your ability to connect with people. And I too feel like I was given the gift of gab and connecting. And I love that the Collab gives me an avenue to do that. Like how, for the audience, how I met Erin and Christian and got them on this call with me tonight was just me being brave and sending a message to Erin. I was like, hey, I love that you and Christian put out this book. I love the content on your Instagram. Would you want to get on a call live with me and talk about stimming and talk about the neurodiversity movement? And Erin's like, absolutely. And I think I can get my friend Christian to hop on too. So here we are. And now I feel like the whole world are my colleagues, which is a pretty empowering feeling.
Totally. Yeah. Because
Definitely.
if you stay in like little tiny spaces, like you said, yeah, it's very tempting to think like, oh, nothing can be done to make this better, you know? And so you're
Mm-hmm.
right. Like, but you got to put yourself out there. You got to
Yeah.
ask the right questions. I work on that with my students every day, because some people
Yeah.
are too afraid to ever even ask, you know,
Mm-hmm.
could this be done better? Is what I'm doing the best way to do this?
Yeah.
You know? And so, and it's hard if people say, oh no, that's good enough. That's fine.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
It was a huge
Absolutely.
deal. Just getting to do the illustrations for this book too, because I've been drawing and drawing and drawing
Yeah.
all my life, and getting to do it professionally. It's like, whoa, like
Amazing.
it's amazing, and it's also kind
Yeah.
of like unnerving, because it's like, wow, one minute I'm just drawing for my own passion, now I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually drawing for an author. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
and that's just a start. You just
Yeah,
get
exactly. You're just getting started, both of you.
yeah.
I'm just looking in the chat again. Glinda from the San Francisco Bay Area saying hi. Hi, Glinda.
Hey.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about the inspiration and how you met up and started this creative partnership. And I know, Erin, you alluded a little bit to the characters in the story, that they're based off of your son and daughter. I don't know if you want to add anything else about the characters. I'm kind of curious how Christian came up with the concept of what the characters would look like. Was that something you decided together? Do they look like your kids? Did Christian find other like muses? How did that all work out?
Well, Christian knows his way around a cartoon, that's for sure.
I bet he does.
Yeah.
So Aaron, you
Well,
want to start?
I mean, I think I mean, okay. First thing that was really important was I really wanted the main character to be autistic, because from
Yes.
the few books that I have seen, the emphasis or the protagonist is always the neurotypical person who's like helping the autistic
Mm. Yep.
right? And I don't love that, right? But also, if we're talking about a disability or something that can be disabling, you do require help, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's disabling, right? So it's like,
Right.
how can I make a protagonist like require help but also be empowered, right? Because
Right.
so that's kind of like, that was sort of a thing that was very important to me, and I didn't want it to be like infantilizing. A lot of times people just, you could just see when they don't have the person with a disability in the driver's seat of the story, and it just
Yes.
doesn't get right, you know. And so there was a part in the story where and Christian did a great job, where Elise, the sister, is twirling her hair, and Joey, the main character, is explaining it. He says, you know, he's explaining what stims are, And then he says, some people do this to stim. Like my sister has to twirl her hair. And that's just the way she is. Because we don't ever talk about neurotypical people about the way that they are. You know, it's always like the disabled person who's like the one-off, who's like the different one. So I wanted to have it like kind of like flip the script, because I know it's kind of unusual to talk about typical things like, well, that's just how they are, you know.
Right.
That was kind of like a little treasure box. And then the other reason, actually, I was going to say this, but I was looking through my old, like when Christian submitted sketches to me, I was like looking through them before we came on. And the reason I hired Christian was at the very end, Joey does something different. Spoiler alert. But Joey, he at least wanted help with the puzzle, and Joey couldn't because he needed help because there was something bothering him and he couldn't stop stimming. But he helps her in the end. But he says, I didn't want to. Puzzle pieces aren't for me. And he turns them into, the Pegasus you see on the front. He turns them into something else. And
I love that.
He did a great job illustrating it, which is really tricky. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but to draw that Pegasus with the wings on it. And of all the illustrators, I think I forget how many I interviewed, but quite a few. And Christian knocked it out of the park. He was amazing, and it was a really hard thing to draw. So I knew he was the right person. But what were you going to say?
I have the book right here. I mean, if we want to like use that as an example. But
perfect.
Erin, I think we tried a couple different versions of the Pegasus, but eventually settled on that one. Why did you pick that particular version of the Pegasus?
Well, no, not that. That is the cover one, but the one I was thinking of was.
Oh, you're thinking of a different one?
Yeah, you know the one at the very.
Oh, that one.
And that's
there we go. Yep.
Okay.
That's big because a lot of autistic people prefer to not use the puzzle
piece, right?
So when he says the puzzle piece isn't for me and he does something cool with it, like he turns it into something else, I thought I was like,
that's very clever.
No, what I don't know if anyone will notice it, but now I've told you the secret. So
I love that.
It was really tricky kind of figuring out how to draw some of that, because like, I mean, I'd never heard of like just the idea of like puzzle pieces together like that to form wings, but like figuring that out was really fun, and it was fun playing around with that design and getting something that was cute, and it really fit the story.
Yeah, I love the colors too, Christian. Like the design is beautiful, and I think like having the rainbow, I'm guessing this was intentional, but like the rainbow for the infinity symbol instead of the puzzle piece. Yeah, you thought of everything. Like it's really beautiful.
Thank you. We tried to cover our bases, and we wanted it to make it bright and fun and friendly. Oh, Glenda, thank you for purchasing copies of the book. Yay.
Oh, she said it's terrific. Thank you for uplifting autistic voices.
Hey.
Woo!
That's cool.
I love
Thank
that.
You.
Yeah, we're hoping to make more. But it's a lot of work. So we're slowly but surely we're chipping away. We're moving forward. But
I would love to reach out to, I don't know if either of you know Diane Robson of the website and blog And Next Comes L. She specializes in hyperlexia, but she has on her website, and I recommend this to all families because it's just an awesome blog post. She picks apart probably 20 different children's books about neurodiversity, and she says like what's good about them and what's not so good about them. Everything from, hey, avoid this one, it talks about curing autism, or avoid this one because it talks a lot about stereotypes, or it talks about autism speaks, or things that have been traumatic, or that the autistic community doesn't support. She gives all of that feedback about a bunch of different books, and she updates it every so often when she learns of a new book that's out. So I hope that your book gets on the list. I love Erin and I are both like, no, I hope that it makes it on the list. And
who has an in with Diane? What's her last name?
Robson.
She's not.
She's
I'm very
on Instagram and she has her blog. I'll link it in the description of this video after. So if viewers want to check out her blog and her book
yeah, that's
recommendation
super
list,
good. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
great resource. I'll definitely look for that myself too. That's wonderful.
Definitely.
Yeah,
yeah, and she posts a lot of free resources, which I think is hard to do. I've learned as a business owner, it's a balance of free and then like this is also your livelihood. So I really appreciate how many things Diane provides to people on her blog free of charge. She has a lot of like visual schedules that you can download and excuse me, a lot of like how to, had like a weird hiccup, a lot of how
That's
to
fine.
articles for families and information about new diagnoses and just kind of, helping families through the journey in a really affirming way. And she has, a personal connection to the neurodivergent community. So, I don't know, it's a great site. I'm going to shout out another person that's part of our bigger community.
that's right. That's it. That's everything. That's really good. Really good.
Let's see. I think we touched a little bit on stimming. Erin, you did a beautiful job kind of describing what stimming was at the beginning of our call. So maybe we can kind of jump to the next question about stimming, which is why do you both think that it's so important for people to understand stimming as part of the neurodiversity movement?
Christian, you want to start?
Uh, uh, sure.
Or do you want
Actually, Erin, could you go?
Yeah, sure. Um, you know, I think I think that that stimming is really important to understand because the truth of the matter is people often like fear what they don't. And the real truth of the matter is the real reason I really wrote this book, it wasn't even really because of like my teaching experiences. It was because of things I read in the news about innocent people
Mm-hmm.
who had really horrible things happen to them because like in these particular situations like law enforcement officers didn't really know what stimming was. And
Right.
so if you're older and you're stimming, because believe it or not, when you're born autistic, you grow up and you're always autistic. You don't outgrow it, and you always need to stim.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to stim because like you're stressed, and that's like a
Right.
release for you. It sometimes escalates situations when police officers are involved, and
Yes.
so these scenarios happened like Matthew Russian, Elijah McClain, Lyndon Cameron, who was a little boy. The others were older teens, so almost adults. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I was like, this is so unnecessary, and it was
Right.
so much rooted in misunderstanding. And I think the epiphany came when I was like, well, that could be my kid.
Yeah.
And I just was like, really kind of like, I can't put him in a bubble. I can't lock him in a cage, and I don't want to. That's not what life is, right? So it's like, how do we do this? And so that is like really why. So it wouldn't happen to anyone else's little baby because I think it's
Yeah.
wrong. And
Yeah.
I know that's like kind of dark and sad, but the truth of
No, but it's raw and it's honest. It's real.
so that's
Definitely.
like that was like the tipping point. But the other thing is, when you learn about what whole body listening is, right? When teachers, especially in elementary age, encourage kids to
Yes.
sit still, stay still,
Mm-hmm.
look at me, look this way, stop tapping your this, do. That is a major reason why depression and anxiety really plague
Yes.
autistic people. Because you do that for 20 years and you tell them like,
You
why are you
mask.
stop? What? Blah, blah. You
Yeah.
encourage them to mask, suppress
Mm-hmm.
their sensory needs, suppress their emotional release. And yeah, it's not a big mystery why people are struggling with mental health. And believe it or not, it's not just autistic people, right? A lot of people stim, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people say, quit doing that. I'm sick of
Yeah.
you looking at you like that. And so there we go. So
Yeah.
I know that this is in a lot of ways like intended to help with the mental health of neurodivergent people. But like
Yeah.
with the story, right? But like my hope is, maybe an adult reading this might be like, whoa, if I don't let this person sit, like what might be, I think people could connect the dots. I think.
Yeah.
I
No,
feel.
I think that is a really important message to share. Your notes all were almost the same as mine on that one. You elaborated with some real world examples, but I was very similarly talking about how stimming is regulation, is self-regulation, and self-regulation is the foundation for connection and communication and learning and safety. And if people aren't safe, you can't have anything else.
Nothing. You
Nothing.
literally cannot grow, you cannot develop, and it is shocking how much, how much once you start learning about it, right? You're like,
Yeah.
whoa, it's rampant. And it
Yes.
has a lot of adverse health effects. And like a lot of I remember when my boy was really little, and he has we both have celiac disease, but I know that there's a lot of gut issues for
Mm-hmm.
people who are autistic, but it's also like, is it that, or is it also maybe anxiety that is stemming,
Yes.
right? You know what I mean? Like it's
Yes.
all connected. And if people feel regulated, I wonder if some of their stomach issues, there's a much
The
more to it.
decrease.
It's a
Yeah.
part of it, right? And all
Yeah.
the physiological effects from this. So, anyways,
Yeah. No, I think those are great points. Like you said, kind of connecting the dots because nothing exists in a vacuum. We're all very complex beings.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Christian, did you want to add to that at all? Did you
Yeah.
have other thoughts?
Well, I think, I mean, Aaron is, of course, as always, right on point. I think also it's really important, just to provide, validation. I mean, I know
Yes.
when, I was growing up, like, I've always been a nail biter, and people have been trying to tell me, hey, don't bite your nails and
Yeah.
don't draw on your schoolwork and stuff. And just working on the book, with Erin, and reading all these things that, from her research, and just the experience, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. It's like, oh my gosh, this is why I bite my nails. This is why I can't stop drawing when I'm nervous or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
it's incredible, and I just hope, like, other people who read our book can have an epiphany like that, and just feel like loved and accepted
Yeah.
from that representation. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think that they will. I mean, I've read comments that people have left on your pages about how their kids lit up seeing a character that was like them.
That's awesome.
And educators are using your books in classrooms all over, teaching neurodivergent and neurotypical kids about stimming and teaching families about stimming. Uh, it's the start of a really big and important conversation that I think is going to have ripple effects where it starts as just a conversation and then moves to acceptance and then moves to greater safety changes like you were talking about, Erin, with police and other fields that are there to do good and protect people, but we're all susceptible to doing harmful practices. So getting more information in people's hands is going to help with that harm reduction piece that we've kind of circled back to a couple times in our chat tonight.
yeah. I know that's kind of like, that's another question about safety issues, because it's like, on the one hand, the safety with like, we law enforcement is supposed to help us feel safe, but something that, and teachers too. And I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed that a lot of times there's this idea that, okay, well, I can't do anything until you stop moving. I need you to stop moving, right? And so
Right.
I think that is a big part of it. Oh, yes. I will play tennis with you as soon as I'm done. Okay. All right.
Another
Um,
hobby.
no, but yeah, like I think if we can train people who are in positions of power to know that when people are moving and they kind of can't stop moving, that you don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily need to freeze them or
Right.
hold them or contain them, that we can all be safe if you know kind of why they're moving that way, right? And to know how to kind of deduce, like, these are signs of something else. So how can we de-escalate the situation without, like because a lot of times when we try to control that stimmy, right, it explodes, right? But
Right.
then on the other hand, to Christian's point, it's sort of like, if you know, like, look, it is not good to be biting your nails, especially if, like, during COVID, right? Like, my little guy loves to put stuff in his mouth and he chews on things, and that chewing, getting his jaw is like really an important release for him. He just really, that's his number one go-to, or it was for a long time.
Yeah.
But in COVID, that's not cool if you're sitting in the classroom with masks on and you're trying to, bite your finger or something. But
Right.
also, it's like, we don't want you to put your hands in your mouth because you can get sick that way, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how can we replace it, right, with something that's like cleaner or a little bit better for your teeth? Like, he always
Right.
bites the end of a pencil and his teeth are getting messed up. So it's like, I understand you need to do this.
Yes.
Also, like you having your teeth. Let's try
Yes.
this instead. Like, what gives you that? And then if it's, sometimes it's like stimming is important to get it out, but also sometimes it's like, wait a second, he's only doing this like before music class. Wait,
Mm-hmm.
music class so loud for him. What if we we gave him some noise canceling headphones, so maybe it wasn't so loud? Might that reduce
Right.
this anxious stim, right? Because it's like, it
Yeah.
clue, right?
Yes.
Someone's feeling anxious. If we don't know why we are feeling that way, and we're noticing that we're stimming, then we can work backwards and say, whoa, like, I only am doing this when I'm anxious. Why can't I stop moving? Why can't I stop? And then now we can work backwards and solve the real issue, which is, I'm anxious because it's so darn loud in there and
Yeah.
freaking out my nervous system. And then
Yes.
now we can solve behaviors that are problematic or potentially harmful, right?
Right. No,
Yeah.
I think that that's really an important point about as the adults, like we sometimes have to be doing a little detective work because some of our young neurodivergent learners might not know
Right.
why they're stimming. Or even like Christian, you said you had some like light bulb moments reading some of Erin's stuff, and you're an adult. So you were connecting new dots for yourself. So I
Exactly.
think like that co-regulation piece is so important before people can self-regulate, and finding safe ways to stim, because we don't want to block it and we don't want to redirect it, but making sure that it is safe, because there are some stims that can hurt your teeth, or you might really like to be on the edge of something and you could fall from like a high place, or some stims, do tissue damage to skin, and so we or swallowing something that's not edible. So
Right.
yeah, having those conversations and doing some detective work. How can that same input or output occur, but keeping that person safe?
And I think that does, it frustrates a lot of parents, because like, I know that some people who are like trying to understand autism, they'll be like, oh, so I should just let them do whatever, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's so much kind of like nuance. I don't mean to
Hmm.
like interject, but I feel
No.
like that's the reason why the conversation kind of like sometimes gets like halted or like
Yeah.
stopped, right? And it's also like,
Yes.
it requires like a certain level of like comfort and curiosity. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are dysregulated. Like, I think there are a lot of people who don't actually know how they feel, right? That
Hmm.
interoception, your sense of
Yes.
knowing how you feel,
Yes.
it's a problem. And it's like, it's not just autistic people in our culture who are struggling with anxiety and depression. A lot of people are. It's like, I wonder what happened if we let ourselves feel our feelings. And like,
Right. And use healthy coping mechanisms.
and the problem is, it's like some people are like, oh, it's so woo woo. It's like, well, feeling things is like normal, and we're
Yeah.
humans, and like, we're
Yeah.
like, it's not really woo woo, but we've kind of like, there's a problem when we kind of treat children like soldiers, or when we treat children like that they are something that need to be controlled and contained. It's like,
Yeah.
movement doesn't, it's okay if people move. It's okay if noise,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
it's unusual, and that is what makes people fearful. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. And the expectations. I was just chatting with someone the other day on a call that what we used to expect of fifth graders, we now expect of first graders. And there's so much talk when I'm at an IEP meeting or collaborating with other professionals. Like there's a lot of conversations that come up about self-regulation and executive functioning skills for very, very young learners. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Before you can self-regulate, we have to co-regulate. And there's so much intentional teaching that has to happen for executive functioning. I mean, it's a lifelong journey. A lot of the parts of your brain that contribute to executive functioning aren't even developed fully until you're 25. But we're like, oh yeah, a 5-year-old, they've got this. They can do it completely by themselves. And if they don't, like, they're trouble. I don't know. It blows my mind sometimes.
Madness. It's madness.
It's madness. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I cut anybody off. I feel like this is really good because we're all like, and this, and that, and this. But I don't want to move on to the next topic if anyone had more to add.
Do you have more to add, Christian?
I mean, I think we've pretty much covered. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that was the end of our talking about like potential harms to look for and those clues, like why is someone stimming and is there a safer way to meet that same need without blocking stimming, because it's so important for regulation and safety. This is a similar question, so I don't know if there would be more to add, but we had another question. What are some ways that parents, caregivers, and practitioners can support stimming? So we talked about that detective work piece. Are there other ways that you see that we can support people in their stims?
Well, one comment I wanted to make that I think could be a good segue into this.
Yeah.
I think really ultimately a really good thing to keep in mind is like stims and stimming are like, I think they can be utilized as like stepping stones to a better understanding and acceptance of what they are, why they're happening, and how we can help people
Yeah.
and have their needs met.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. I think yeah, that's great. Let's see. I'm just pulling up the question again so I don't forget. I also, a really easy or simple way is maybe have people think about the ways in which they stim. I remember like my first kind of like light bulb moment probably happened, I guess I would say probably about 5 years ago. I went to this kind of like a random, like free thing that the school district put on. It was by an occupational therapist, and she happened to be a parent of a student that I had. And so I was like, oh, I'll go and, see her do her thing. But
Yeah.
she was like saying like, she was talking about vestibular input. And I mean, that was like, another language, but, she talked a lot about, or proprioceptive input and all these different kinds of input. And I was like, wait, what? There's other things. And then she said, yeah, like, do any of you guys like to run or really like to lift weights and you feel like you're kind of floating in outer space if you don't do that? And I was like, I feel very seen right now, but like, I didn't know,
Yeah.
why that is. And then she kind of explained how that helps, like with proprioceptive input and things like that. And I was like, wait, that's helping me feel grounded, because when I don't, it's like really, it was kind of like my first little tiny taste into it. But
Yeah.
you understand yourself and the stims, because we all, pretty much everyone does stim or do things to regulate their senses, but they don't even know that they're
Right.
doing it. It's not really that complicated, right? It's
Right.
like you know that you do certain things, right? I
Mhm.
nails, I tap my toes, I have to go like lift the weights or run the thing, because if I don't, like, it really messes me up,
Yeah.
whatever your thing is, if you can think about like how that makes you feel. And
Mhm.
yeah, to some extent, I understand like a daily routine just makes you feel like safer, but like, how does it actually make your body feel? Or even just
Yeah.
encouraging adults or caregivers to say, like, wait, what is the state of my body right now? Like, get yourself grounded, get
Yeah.
yourself in your body. And I wonder what would happen if they felt regulated and they like took time, right? Because it's not just autistic people who need this, so and I think that's a big thing for parents and caregivers is that it's so much like, well, like, it's often just like a deficit based place that they kind of approach their child with, or
Mhm.
a situation with like troubling behaviors, or stims that are kind of very uh like difficult for them to manage, or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
we're always approaching things like they're doing it and I don't need to do that. And we kind of just kind of create this big gap, I guess, is what I'm
Right.
trying to roundabout way. And if we can close the gap by first understanding like our own senses, I think a lot of us are detached from like, the interior, right? In a
Yes.
sensational way, in a sensory way. And
Yeah.
you can get tapped into it real quick if you're curious and if you're
Yes.
honest. And then you can understand your kid better, or your students better, or your clients better, or yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love the part that you talked about with curiosity, Erin. I had another guest on a couple weeks ago, my good friend Mallory. She's a social worker, and she talked about supporting families and thinking about coming from a place of curiosity first, because so it's human nature to come from a place of judgment. If we really take a step back and come at it from a place of curiosity and think like, well, how are we similar to that person? See the similarities first and then the differences, because we don't want to ignore the differences either. Like
Sure.
differences are so important, but I think we hyper focus on those in a judgmental way. And it's like, okay, well, how are we similar? And
Right.
then be curious about the differences.
Yeah.
I think it's good also to change that judgment into compassion, and
Yes.
Mhm.
especially.
Yes, compassion is everything. I was saying to Erin on Instagram, so I want to share this with you too, Christian. So my business, the Collab, is actually short for the Compassion Collaborative. So
Hey.
compassion, yeah, it's a big part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because there's a lot of work to do in all of our fields to be more compassionate, and just humankind in general. Forget about being in a certain field or not, just being human. There's a lot of work we can all do to be more compassionate.
Yeah.
That was just a little side note. That's where my business name came from.
That's
So
cool.
it really took a long time for me to figure out a name that made sense. I had a whole list on my iPhone of of different ideas, and I'm like, nope, that doesn't really fit. And I had my mother-in-law saying like, oh, maybe something with like mountains, and I'm like, I love mountains, but that's not what I feel about the populations that I want to support. It's not related. Like, what do I really think about the families and the kids that I've worked with in the past and then I'm going to work with in the future? And I wanted it to be a place of compassion and then a place where collaboration happens between all different types of people. So the name finally came together after probably 50 different variations.
Oh, it's a really good name.
It's a
Thank
wonderful
you.
name.
Thank you. I'm sure you guys felt similarly with your various drafts and sketches, and you're like trying all these different variations, just looking for the perfect fit, and then it finally comes together.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There
It's a lot
were
of
a
work.
lot of stages we went through. Trying to get like Joey's expressions right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, I generally I draw in a very exaggerated cartoony style, and Erin, a lot of her comments were like, "This is fantastic, but you tone it down a little bit, please." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oops."
Yeah. We have really similar cartoon taste, so we were in the
Yeah,
same palette.
I love that.
Yep.
I'm just looking in the chat again. Glenda said she's gifting the book to her son's classroom. Neurodiversity is natural and should be accepted and embraced in all spaces. Thanks, Glenda.
Thank you, Glenda.
Yes.
Yay.
So we had just one more official question. It was, what do you wish everyone knew about stimming? It's a big one.
I mean, I've sort of touched.
Save the best for last.
I sort of touched on that. I mean, with my last comment, I think
Yeah.
a little love and compassion goes a long way. I think that's really the bottom line of, at least my perspective. I mean, anything you want to add to that, Erin?
I don't know. I guess I just wish. Yeah, you're right. Like we have kind of touched on it, but I guess I hope that people they know what stimming is, so they can be compassionate with everyone, and that once we become aware and we have the right words, then we
Yes.
can both educate each other. You don't have to. I know it took me years to kind of get to this place, but it's really not that complicated, right? It's just not common knowledge, and it's kind of weird that it's not, because it's something that pretty much everyone needs to do and everyone does, and then we don't have the right word, we'll call it other things,
right.
and I'm not sure why that is. So we can change it. It's not, we can put a man on the moon. We can put a person on the moon. We can all understand what stimming is. It's not that hard. So
Yeah. No, and you're right. And the words that we end up using are harmful adjectives. I think before we hopped on live, Erin, you and I were talking about the words that we hear at meetings sometimes where people get labeled as lazy or stubborn or naughty. And it's, again, if you can look with that compassionate lens and do the detective work, like, why is this behavior happening? It's not because of this, harmful adjective we can slap on someone. Like, there's an unmet need there, whether it be emotional, sensory, communication. There's an unmet need, and it's really our job to figure out what that is.
Because I think it's like, you know what it is too? Once you become aware, right? You see it's like all around you, and I almost feel like it's like lazy. I don't mean that people like it's lazy to be judgmental, right?
Yeah, right.
And I understand, like, a lot of times when people, I'm not trying to say it like as a derogatory thing, but it's like not very thoughtful, I guess is a better word.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to just do a snap judgment doesn't take much effort. It takes a lot more effort to do that detective work.
And it's also like, okay, so let's call this kid lazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to hold someone accountable and ultimately get them to like do something, is calling them lazy going to get them to do it? Like, I don't know. If it was that easy, it would probably work all the time, right? So
right.
what we really need is people to say, like, is what I'm doing like helpful, right?
Yeah.
Is it working? If I'm having these negative interactions every single time with this lazy kid, might it be something else? Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's not even take lazy off the table. Let's leave it on the table. What else could it be? Like,
yeah.
but I don't think a lot of people are encouraged to think like that, right? Because a lot of people are like, well, I just suppress every feeling and need I have. And then, I get my work done. And look, I'm happy, it's like they're miserable,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy as they're eating their huge tub of ice cream or like binge drinking or something. You're like, yeah, you look great, nice and healthy. Yeah. No,
you're really changing the world. But it's hard because I think that's you know what? I think that's what it is. It's like a lot of people like, I want them to be held accountable. In the real world, they can't just do nothing. They can't just, right? And so it's like, I understand that we all are going to have responsibilities, right? And I think, and I know this isn't exactly to your question, but
that's
Christian,
okay.
you can do it too. But like, one thing I've noticed with my children, one is neurotypical and one is autistic, is that like my autistic child does a lot of things really well, but they don't look the same as my daughter, or he learns how to do something, but it takes him a bit longer, but he still learns how to do something well, and it does look different, but he knows how to do it. I feel like it's interesting that I had him first and then my neurotypical daughter second, because if it was reversed, I would think like, oh, I'm such a good parent. She just does all these things this very particular way. And, she's like the typical kid who's going to do well in school. But the truth of the matter is, like, she has struggles too. She cares an awful lot about what people think of her.
Yeah.
And she's like very like socially inclined, but that comes with, I don't want to call it disabling because it's not really, but it causes her a lot of like grief. And there's a lot of struggles that she has because of it that my son doesn't have those same struggles. They're different because growing is different, for everyone. And it's not about one being better or worse, but I guess I just mean, like, once I learned, like, oh, wait, he's making progress. He's getting towards it. Sometimes it's in a different way, or sometimes it's a bit slower rate than what I would have thought it would be, but it's not. I think the only time we need to be concerned is when a child isn't growing, right?
Yes.
They're not evolving. If they're not finding ways to like learn, then yeah, we got to get worried and get some more. But you don't need therapy just because your child is autistic, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I did a post just the other day. Your child is more than their therapy schedule.
Yes.
Because from the time that parents get or caregivers get that diagnosis, that 20 to 40 page packet, it's like that last page. Here's all the therapies your child needs just because they have an autism diagnosis. Your child does not need therapy because of their neurotype. People need therapy or services to help with barriers. It's not because they're autistic or an ADHDer or have Down syndrome or whatever the label might be.
Right.
You need services to break down barriers. You don't need services because of the person you are.
Yeah, and
So
you can
thank you
always
for saying that.
yeah, you could always my test that I do, the easy quick test is I'm like, let's just flip it. Do you need to go to therapy because you're neurotypical? You know, no.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to go to therapy to reduce your neurotypicalism and become
Right.
have
Right.
you oh, you haven't? Why not? Oh, because you
Yep.
can't change your neurotype? Okay.
Yeah.
Then now let's go
Yeah.
apply it to the other types out there and see what happens.
That's a great tip because I think sometimes having those examples can be really eye-opening to people.
Yeah, and it's safe to do. It's like, oh, now when I say it like that, it does hit a little different.
Yeah, yeah, it sits different in your gut after that. You're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, yeah, that doesn't sound quite right. That's not really affirming."
Yeah.
Definitely. One thing I do want to add, kind of like as an aside that I don't,
Yeah.
we might have touched on a little bit, but didn't really delve into a whole lot is I think another thing stimming comes into play with is anxiety management. Um,
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily relate to sensory input. It could just be like just anxiety in general. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you're seeing a little bit of that with me right now, just managing my social anxiety with this interview. Not
Yep.
specifically this interview, but just
Yeah, no, I hear
anxiety in
you.
general.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's another thing or book definitely. Hopefully, it's going to help with a little bit or a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, no, thank you for adding that, Christian.
No problem.
I think it's an important point because as you've both so wonderfully put throughout the call, that stimming is something that helps everybody. And it could be for mental health, it could be for sensory needs, it could be from, boredom or joy, sadness, anger. I mean, it really it helps everybody in different ways. Um, thank you both for sharing that. I'll just end the call by giving you both the opportunity if you want to tell the audience where they can find you on social media if you want to do that. No pressure either way.
Sure. I'm
Uh,
at Sensational Stims on Instagram and Facebook. And you can get our book on Amazon. And where are you, Christian?
I'm mainly on Twitter. I'm CDCB's VCR,
Ooh, the
and
VCR, nice.
yep, tape stuff.
Tape stuff.
And
Whoop whoop.
Yes.
yep, and then I'm also on YouTube as CDCB2,
Awesome.
and yeah,
Yeah. If after the call, if you both wouldn't mind emailing me those kind of links and handles, I can put them in the description of the video so people can find you easily.
oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, if people are looking to find me other places than this YouTube channel where you already are, if you're watching this, I'm also on Facebook, Rebecca Bodette. I'm on Instagram at the_com_collab. Um, and then I have a website, www.thecomcollab.com. Thank you to Erin and Christian for taking time to talk about stimming and the neurodiversity movement. It was really nice getting to know both of you and hearing the powerful message.
Right
Thank you
back
so
at you.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're amazing. Keep it up.
thank you. I hope to talk with you both soon. Maybe we can do another call sometime on another topic. I would love it.
Sure,
Oh, that'd be
I'm here
great.
for that.
Awesome. All right, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
do
I'm
great
gonna
work.
end the stream. If anyone wants to reach out with other questions in the comments, we'd be happy to answer them, at a later date. So feel free to reach out after you've watched the video. All right. Have a good night, everybody.